Okay, Councillor Cisco, we can start whenever you're ready.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this a meeting to order. This is the first meeting of the General Committee to debate the 2021 budget. We'll begin with land acknowledgement. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people. I'll move on to item number 3, the adoption of the agenda, and I'll look to the Deputy Clerk.
So the only amendment we have for today's agenda is a correction for item 8.3, the draft 2021 city departmental expenditure and non-tax revenue budget. There is an error on page 2 of the operating budget book. The 6th line under mitigation measures should be increase in licenses and permit revenue, not reduction in licenses and permit revenue.
All right, thank you, Deputy Clerk. Are there any other amendments to today's agenda? All right, seeing none, moving the motion to adopt the agenda as amended, I have Councillor Phillips. Just a wave of the hand, Councillor Phillips, if you want to.
So moved.
Wonderful, thank you. And for seconder, I have Councillor Dodge.
So moved.
Excellent, thank you so much. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Seeing none, we can move on to item number 4, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest today? All right, not seeing any hands. If you do have any declarations of pecuniary interest, a reminder, same as regular council meetings, submit written statements of declarations to the Deputy Clerk. Moving on to the Chair's report, I will try and be brief this evening. A couple of things with respect to the budget. First of all, I want to thank members of council for opting to make this process a general committee process this year as opposed to the budget standing committee. I think we're going to get a good result out of this given the circumstances of the year. A few items with respect to the budget and budget engagement. The telephone town hall is taking place next Wednesday, October 28th at 7 p.m. Public input this year obviously is more critical than ever. And so anyone who's wishing to make sure they get a call for the telephone town hall, and additionally, those folks who want to make sure they do not get a call from the telephone town hall can do so by contacting the city. They can either visit stcatharines.ca/budget talk or call Citizens First at 905-688-5600, and they can speak to Citizens First there. If you want your name added or deleted from the call list, you have to do that before Tuesday, October the 27th at noon. Additionally, for those folks who may not be able to be on the telephone town hall or who are on the telephone town hall but have other comments they want to leave, a reminder of Engage STC. engagestc.ca/2021 budget. And I will say all of these web addresses are on the city's website, but it's a way to virtually offer additional information on your behalf, as well as learn more and engage with the budget process. There's education on the budgets, including an explanation on the differences between the capital and operating budgets, explains how property taxes are made up and how they're finalized and administered. There's links that provide you an option to read the draft capital and the draft operating budgets, which are what we will be debating over the next several weeks, and other important budget details. And it has dates of the upcoming meetings that are coming. So from an engagement opportunity and engagement point of view, there's a chance to learn more about the process. There are Q&A tools and other things that allow residents to ask questions. And staff are monitoring Engage SCC regularly and will be able to answer questions that come in, and information can be passed on to the general committee to be able to work on that. I just wanted to speak very briefly before we move on to the reports this evening and the presentations. In going through the budget books, and I know everybody's had an opportunity to take a look on a preliminary basis through the budget books, and I encourage everybody to go through those books. If you haven't completed it, to get through them as best you can. One of the things that's been raised to me, and a number I know of councillors have been speaking about this, is that there are a lot of issues and a lot of line items in the operating budget specifically that deal with one-time expenses that are related to COVID. So I know Councillor Littleton right now is not here, the Vice Chair of the Budget Committee. She is at a speaking engagement and should be finished in the next little while with respect to women in leadership positions. But she does have a report request that'll be coming forward this evening, asking staff to itemize those issues, those line items in the budget that do deal with one-time COVID expenses. And because there may be opportunities to be able to offset some of those costs going forward, with a recognition that because they are not structural in nature, they won't be a part of the budget going forward, whether it be expense side or revenue side. A report back to council so that we can look at those and have a better, more full picture of what the budget actually looks like this year with respect to what items we're going to have to continue carrying forward past 2021 into the future, and those items which are likely just a one-time or a short-term expense. So with that, I will move on now to item number 6, motion to move reports on consent. There's nothing on consent this evening, so we will skip past consent reports and go right into item 8.1 under discussion reports. Very briefly, I just wanted to say again, thank you to council for transitioning over to the general committee for the 2021 operating and capital budgets. I know councillors will be coming to these meetings prepared, and we've all shown over the many months on Zoom that we can be very active participants during the meeting. The rules of procedure for general committee are the same as they would always be, and the decisions that we make will be confirmed at following council meetings. Okay, this should be a formality. It's the way general committee has always worked. I hope it won't be treated as an opportunity to redebate and rediscuss, and I think that's the key. If we have the debates and the discussions in general committee, when these items are then ratified at regular council, we need to move it forward and continue on with the process. Purpose and the intent of general committee is to have the full discussion about these budget related items. This is an opportunity for all of us to ask questions, to debate and propose amendments, and the report in 8.1 lays out a good timeline for those amendments, because I know that will be where the greatest debate takes place. I would ask that we not hold our questions or amendments until December. One of the benefits of doing the budget this way this year is that we'll be able to have fulsome discussions and maybe longer discussions over the course of multiple meetings, as opposed to trying to have the entire debate on 1 or 2 nights in the middle of December. So if you have amendments, it's listed in the report in 8.1 on those nights when we are looking to debate those amendments. But if you have amendments that you know you will want to make, I would ask that you forward them to finance now, or when you come upon them, so that staff are able to give a full understanding and a more holistic view of those amendments in the context of the entire budget. As I mentioned in the chair's report, we do have the telephone town hall next Wednesday. I encourage all members of council, if you have the opportunity, I know the invitation has been sent out, but if you'd like to sit in at City Hall and listen into the proceedings, you are of course more than welcome. And we have Engage STC/2021 budget for folks in the community to learn about that. With that said, I will look to staff to see if they have any further comments on 8.1, and specifically I'm looking to Ms. Douglas if she has any further comments that she'd like to make with respect to 8.1.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. You've summarized the report well, and the direction to the committee. So we're fine at this point. Thank you.
Excellent. With that then, can I have, moving the recommendation in the report was to be Councillor Littleton, but I don't know if she is here yet. So seeing that she isn't, is there another member of council who could move the report for me?
So moved.
Councillor Kushner, thank you, and Councillor Dodge for a seconder. So I will look to the clerk to call the roll.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Yes.
Counselor Townsend,
Yes.
Counselor Williamson,
Yes.
Counselor Dodge,
Yes.
Counselor Garcia,
Yes.
Mayor Senzik,
Yes.
and Chair Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right, item 8.2, financial management services, corporate asset management, the 2021 capital budget, 4-year forecast, and asset management status update. And if I could ask Anne Tournier, the corporate asset manager, financial management services, Anthony Martuccio, the director of engineering facilities and environmental services, and Christine Douglas, director of financial management services, city treasurer, to present the items 8.2 and 8.3. So we'll have the presentation for both of those now.
All right, I'll start the video.
Our city is much like the trees and plants that earned it the name. Like a tree, we grow above and below the ground. From roots of sewers and water lines, up a trunk of roads and facilities, to leaves of services like recreational programs and support for businesses. For our city to stay healthy and continue to grow, it requires regular nutrients, just like any tree. Those nutrients come in the form of tax dollars and other revenue sources, prudently managed by staff and dutifully allocated at the right spots by City Council. There are two budgets delivering tax dollars to keep the city growing and thriving. The operating budget provides the day-to-day funding to deliver programming, keep streets plowed, undertake regular maintenance at facilities, pay staff, and keep the lights on. The capital budget concerns investment directly into physical assets, such as renewal projects for roads, construction of new facilities, and replacement of old ones. Every year, the decisions made as part of the budget process guide what parts of the tree grow and which are pruned. It's no easy task. There's lots to consider from root to stem to leaf when it comes to our city. Let's start at the roots: water, sewer, and storm management. The dollars directed here protect our environment and ensure all our residents have clean drinking water. Above the ground, roads, sidewalks, and trails ensure kids have safe spaces to walk to school, transport our citizens, and help build a greener future through active transportation investments like bike lanes. Fire services protect residents and property, while a trunk of community facilities like older adult centers, community centers, and the St. Catharines Museum and Welland Canal Center provide spaces for the community to gather, learn, and grow. Parks and sports fields branch out, ensuring everyone has space to enjoy the outdoors and stay active, healthy, and happy. Alongside them, athletic facilities like arenas, pools, and the St. Catharines Kiwanis Aquatic Center provide space for athletic excellence, for kids to play hockey, for seniors to swim, and for athletes to compete. All these branches reach out to support recreation opportunities and programs. The farmers market supporting the work of local growers, swimming lessons to ensure kids are safe in the water, art classes for young and old alike sparking creativity, and education programs connecting our citizens with their own history and the world around them. Beside these programs, an array of city services from clerks to planning and building services keep business moving and advance the daily lives of our citizens. Be it visiting citizens first at City Hall to make inquiries with a customer service representative, building inspectors to ensure homes are safe and sturdy, or the economic development team helping businesses adapt to a rapidly changing economic environment, our residents can count on their city. There are the less tangible parts of our city, the things under the bark that, while unseen, are essential. Administration and support services keep track of tax dollars and ensure they are wisely spent, ensure facilities are regularly disinfected, and make sure records are safely stored. There are all the staff members that keep every facet of the city operating. They are the instructors teaching classes, the employees keeping facilities clean, the workers ensuring water mains and sewers remain functioning, the administration staff processing payments and licenses, and so much more. At the same time, virtual infrastructure keeps staff connected with each other and the wider community. From new technology keeping staff productive while working at a distance, to the city website and social media messaging delivering important information to new and wider audiences. There's a lot we do, and to keep doing it as we have done requires the same amount of investment as the year before. plus additional expenditures to keep up with rising costs and inflation. Every year, expenses from materials to staffing increase, and that translates to an increase in taxes to maintain the level of service our residents have come to depend on. What's more, that is only the case if the way we operate stays the same, something that isn't an option in the year ahead as our community continues to pull together against COVID-19. We want to stay healthy, our staff to be healthy, our citizens to be healthy, and that means new costs and new investments at all levels of the organization. Of course, there is the option to spend less, but remember, those numbers in a budget book aren't just numbers. They are parts of the tree that will need to be pruned off. Those numbers may be important infrastructure investments to save the city money in the long run, a speedy repair to a pothole to ensure our residents can travel safely to work and/or school, or a child's chance to cool off at a splash pad on a hot summer's day. This is our home, STC.
Like any growing tree, the nutrients provided through the capital budget is what allows our city to grow, blossom, and expand. It is the root, the trunk, the structure of our city tree. It supports the economic prosperity through investment in old and new infrastructure in a growing city, whether it be transportation, roads, bridges, or corporate infrastructure. It supports economic stewardship and climate change initiatives through investment in our waterways, shoreline, bike lanes, pollution control, and tree canopy. It allows for investment in social well-being and cultural renaissance through projects such as Canada Summer Games, park renewal plan, trail improvements, and upgrades to basketball courts and playground equipment for everyone to enjoy. These are the long-term investments in infrastructure in our city. The 2021 budget and four-year forecast before you tonight addresses corporate strategies and plans like the Sunset Beach redevelopment plan, the water wastewater 10-year financial plan, and the fire master plan and arena strategy. Staff continue to work on the legislated asset management plans as well as tools that support asset management. Financial resources supporting this work have been included in the budget. In establishing the capital budget, staff used the prioritization criteria listed above in the blue box. Staff's primary focus is mitigating corporate risk and compliance with legislated requirements while striving to improve service levels and service delivery in alignment with priorities established by council. Carrying out coordinated projects allows the city to take advantage of economies of scale. Coordinated projects are projects where we carry out asset renewal for multiple asset groups at one time. In determining these projects, staff identify the most urgent needs for the group of assets as a whole, which means that in some cases, asset renewal on individual assets are advanced or deferred to fit the project. Regional priorities and plans are also considered through this process. The replacement value of the assets within the current asset management plan is approximately $4.9 billion. We also have identified an infrastructure deficit of $453 million, as shown by the top red line. This equates to a 9% infrastructure deficit. This deficit is in line with the national average of 12%. The middle blue line on the graph shows the annual target for asset renewal, which is based on the useful life of the various assets. Finally, the bottom green line shows the annual budget dedicated to asset renewal. You will notice in most of the following slides that the city is budgeting well below the targeted reinvestment rate. The city's road inventory currently includes 571 kilometers of roads. The continued maintenance, repair, and renewal of road assets is critical in order to promote activity, livability, and connectivity, and results in a network of transportation infrastructure and services that enables people and goods to travel seamlessly, utilizing many modes of transportation. Proposed works include the continued expansion and integration of active transportation facilities such as bike lanes. The 604 kilometers of water mains owned and operated by the city provide safe and reliable drinking water and supports fire suppression for the residents and businesses within the urban boundary. The work proposed in the budget includes the replacement of critical water mains that have experienced multiple breaks, color water issues, and where materials have reached the end of their useful life. The budget also includes an allocation to update the city's water master servicing plan, which will allow us to continue supporting development applications within the city. The 571 kilometers of sanitary sewers owned by the city convey sewage from residential, commercial, and industrial properties within the urban boundary to the regional trunk mains and ultimately to the wastewater treatment plants before it is released into the environment. Priority sewer sections were identified through the citywide Zoom camera inspection and evaluation project carried out from 2017 to 2020. The priority sewer sections have identified various deficiencies, some of which could result in basement flooding. The proposed budget includes an allocation to address some of the top priority locations and conduct further CCTV inspections to more accurately identify potential concerns. A majority of the storm sewer work is focused on the installation of new storm sewers to allow for the separation of stormwater from combined sewers or from infiltration into sanitary sewers. This type of work assists in alleviating basement flooding and overflows into the environment. The proposed works also include a provision for a stormwater master servicing study to better identify the future needs of a storm drainage system. In accordance with the city's official plan, the city continues to install sidewalks to allow for the safe passage of pedestrians of all physical abilities and promote active transportation throughout the city. The proposed 2020 budget includes the installation of new sidewalks and walkways and the repair or renewal of existing infrastructure. The city owns and operates a variety of city-owned facilities that support both corporate functions, such as in City Hall, Lake Street Service Center, and the fire stations, as well as recreational and cultural functions, such as in our arenas, senior centers, park amenities, and museums. The 2021 budget includes renewal and repair work to many of these facilities to allow for the continued safe use, implementation of accessibility, and to meet the operational needs of the corporation. Many of these works support strategic plans approved by council, such as the Sunset Beach Master Plan, Arena Strategy, and Fire Master Plan. Other notable works that the city must address include priority shoreline erosion concerns, watercourse rehabilitation works, maintenance and repair of our bridge structures, and city share contributions to regional projects. The 2021 capital budget also includes a proposed budget or project for potential ISIP funding that would allow the city to address deficiencies or gaps in our active transportation networks, with 80% funding supported from other levels of government. The COVID pandemic has highlighted the need for people to have safe places to be active, and the proposed projects help the city to address some of those needs. This potential funding opportunity would also help to alleviate financial pressures in future budgets by freeing up these funds to address shortcomings in our asset management plan as it relates to core infrastructure. The corporate strategy and priorities established by council guide the way in which staff develop programs and implement initiatives supported by the capital budget. Active living and climate change are a couple of predominant priorities identified by council. The 2021 capital budget includes approximately $14,225,000 of initiatives that support active living through the expansion of our active transportation network, such as bike lanes, walkways, and sidewalks, installation of new outdoor amenities, such as our playgrounds, or repairs to our indoor recreational facilities. The proposed budget also includes approximately $3,620,000 of initiatives that support climate change and environmental stewardship through projects like shoreline protection, overflow mitigation, improving the energy efficiency of our facilities, or through the tree planting program. I will now pass things over to Ann Turini to support the corporate asset manager.
Thanks, Anthony. All the projects included in the 2021 budget which Anthony has just reviewed, total almost $48.4 million. Consistent with prior years, we fund these expenditures from a variety of sources. Just highlighting some of the larger sources, the gas tax continues to provide an ongoing source of funding year over year. And the anticipated ICEP COVID-19 grant is included in the other external funding category. In response to the financial pressures exerted by COVID-19, the debt funding is replacing a portion of the tax support and the water and the wastewater rates so that the capital impact on the operating budget is lower than in prior years. Even with these swaps, the 5% debt funding of the 45% debt funding of the capital budget is in line with the prior year's funding percentages. The debt, going forward one, thank you. The debt funding of the city's capital expenditures is guided by 3 key standards in the city's debt management strategy, and they're listed in the slide that you see. Of note, in 2021, we temporarily departed from requiring a 10% capital out of revenue contribution. For 21, 22, and 23, we're proposing capital out of revenue contributions of 5% for tax support, so that as to provide temporary relief to the operating budget. In water and wastewater, similar reductions in capital out of revenue have been applied. While the debt strategy caps the debt charges at 10% of operating expenditures, the current forecast reflects ratios above 10% by 2022. And by 2025, the rate is forecast to reach 11.7%. These forecasts will change as the actual budgets are set and the debt is actually issued. So, for example, the forecast model uses a conservative 4% borrowing rate, and our current borrowing rates are much lower than this, which will reduce the debt servicing costs in total. Next slide. Looking at our capital plans and the related funding over the next 5 years is required as per the Municipal Act. And these forecasts also support our debt forecasts. The bottom green band shows the projected debt funding, and the future years funding will be reevaluated as each budget is prepared, and it will differ from the forecasts that are shown above as we identify specific required expenditures and funding details are confirmed. Incorporating the forecast debt funding in the prior slide, this graph shows the debt servicing costs in the lower blue blocks, and then it also shows the council debt limit at 10% of operating expenses in the orange line. Looking at the orange line, the current forecast shows the 2022 debt servicing ratio moving to 10.4%, which is just above that 10% council limit. And by 2025, as I'd mentioned, it would reach, we are forecasting 11.7%. As shown by the green line, the city remains well within the provincial limit, better known as the annual repayment limit or the ARL, and it's set at 25% of own source revenues. The gap between the orange and the green lines shows the debt servicing room between the city and the provincial limits. And the debt limits will change as the actual results are incorporated into the ratios. The capital budget and the operating budget are interrelated, as the operating budget provides direct funding to the capital budget through several sources. There's capital out of revenue charges, revenue funding, direct support for roads and sidewalk capital programs, and then there's the infrastructure levy. Also, the operating budget funds the debt servicing on the debt that's issued to fund the capital budget. So before moving on to the operating budget, I want to highlight that the 2021 capital budget report before you today includes a recommendation for GSC to forward the 2021 capital budget to the November 16th council meeting for approval, which would occur after the budget is tabled at the November 2nd council meeting. I'll be now turning the floor over to Christine Douglas, our City Treasurer, and she will be presenting the information on the 21 operating budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Every tree needs regular maintenance, nurturing, and support throughout its growth. Features that foster and support our tree are found throughout the operating budget, which allocates staff, programming, services, maintenance, and support to our tree. They are often not as noticeable as infrastructure, but are the elements needed to support a sturdy tree and to allow it to continue to grow and blossom. These details are what support our ongoing efforts for economic prosperity, social well-being, environmental stewardship, and cultural renaissance. The operating budget process begins early in the year and is a key work plan focus of all SLT and city departments. 2021 operating budget represents the fourth operating budget that has been prepared and presented to Council before the year begins. During 2020, in addition to staff preparing the 2021 operating budget, they were also busy preparing a number of updates to Council related to 2020 budget and the impact that COVID-19 has had on the city's operating, parking, and water and wastewater budgets. Tonight, Council will receive budget information related to city departmental expenditures and non-tax revenues for 2021. Here is a quick snapshot of the city's departmental expenditures and non-tax revenues for 2021. City departmental expenditures, including debt repayments, are increasing by 3.8%, and non-tax revenues are decreasing by 9.53%, which results in a total city net expenditure increase for 2021 of 5.42%. Shown here is how the city total expenditures for 2021 of $102.3 million support the various services provided by the city, such as fire protection, roads and walkways, parks, cemeteries, arena, planning and building services, and economic development. These services represent the leaves of our tree. The total cost, less non-tax revenues, to maintain city services in 2021 is $92.7 million, which represents an increase of 5.42% from 2020. The city provides hundreds of services to our citizens that are all important to different members of our community. As shown here, the city's base budget, non-discretionary, and discretionary increases are increasing the 2021 budget by only 0.59%. The larger purple section of this graph relates to COVID-19 related challenges, which represent 4.2 million or 4.83%. COVID is having a significant impact on city services in 2021. Let's dive a little deeper into these challenges. Starting at the base of the pyramid, COVID-19 pressures on the 2021 operating budget are the following. Parking services is one of the largest services impact. The decline in these revenues are expected to continue in 2021. Revenues unfavorably impacted are non-tax revenues, which include investment income, penalty and interest on taxes, supplemental taxes, and provincial offense revenues. Other revenues include facility rentals and usage, such as arenas, Kiwanis Aquatic Center, municipal golf course, and parks. Bingo licenses, planning fees, and tours and sales related to the city visitor guide are also expected to decline. Protecting our citizens and staff has been a top priority for the city throughout the pandemic and will continue in 2021 with additional security and custodial staff for enhanced cleaning measures, hand sanitization, and masks. The Meridian Center has also been impacted by the limited usage of concerts and events. Finally, the St. Catharines Cultural Improvement Program is impacted by the decline in special events parking revenues, and it is necessary to increase the tax support of this program in 2021. All these items together total an impact to the leaves of our tree of 4.2 million. Without these pressures, there would not be this additional tax levy support required in 2021. The Engage STC online engagement platform budget tool will be used again in 2021 as an ongoing community opportunity for residents to learn more about the budget, see how familiar citizens are with the budget process, a forum for them to share ideas, as well as a chance for residents to ask questions and share their feedback as the budget evolves. To check this platform out, please visit www.engagestc.ca/2021 budget. COVID has also impacted the way that we engage the public. It is great that we have the experience with the telephone town hall as a way for the city to reach 30,000 residents in one night. Next Wednesday, a week from tonight, will be the city's 7th telephone town hall. On Monday, December 14th, a public meeting will be held prior to the City Council's deliberation of the 2021 budget. In addition to the telephone town hall and public meeting, over the next couple of months, there are a number of general committee meetings for 2021 budget, which are held at 6 p.m. in council chambers at City Hall and are virtually streamed via the Zoom platform. All general committee meetings are also live streamed through YouTube. The 2021 operating budget is anticipated to be tabled with the November 30th council agenda. Council budget night is for 2021 for the operating budget is scheduled for December 14th and if necessary, December 15th. The city's budget shapes, in order, can you go, sorry. That's okay.
Sorry, just having some technical difficulties. Not sure what's going on here. We lost it. It totally disappeared.
At the same time, Councillor, probably just a coincidence.
Yeah, I don't know. That was really strange. Sorry about that. I'll get you back up again on the very last slide.
It's the joy of the internet.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I'll make. That's great. Thanks, Rebecca. Yep. The city budget shapes the future of our city. Stay in touch by visiting the budget page of the city's website or engage stc.ca/2021 budget or by sending us an email. You may also connect with us through Facebook, Twitter, or giving us a call by phone. In order to keep our tree healthy and to rise out of the pandemic stronger and more resilient, there is a need for an additional $4.2 million of tax support in 2021. The City of St. Catharines is a magnificent tree, but one that needs ongoing commitment and investment as it grows. These investments occur through asset management, the ISIP funding, capital programming, and supported through staff and services. Our tree is not at full growth and where we want it to be. These things take time, but with ongoing commitment, investment, and support, our tree is getting there. The COVID-19 pandemic has put a strain on our tree, challenging our community, staff, and resources to change and adapt to a new normal. The pandemic has now become an added limb that we must incorporate into the overall plan for growth and sustainability. To keep this limb from breaking off, it needs the time, resources, and support of all stakeholders, council, staff, and community. Staff are thinking outside the box and looking for creative solutions, such as partnering with other municipalities on IT solutions and looking to repurpose some of our physical assets. Getting to the other side of COVID and for the limb to remain strong takes a diversified team from all corners of our community with support from council and staff. This is our St. Catharines.
All right. Thank you very much to staff for the presentation and the analogy to a tree, which was appreciated. I'm going to now look to council for questions regarding the presentation. I'm going to ask that we, well, at this point, we can ask questions with respect to 8.2 or 8.3, the capital or the operating budget. And then once questions related to the presentation are done, we'll move on specifically to item 8.2. So are there any questions related to the presentation that we've just seen? I'm just looking for raised hands on the Zoom platform. All right, Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just stay with the presentation, like I have a lot of other questions, but
if we could keep presentations at this point, or sorry, questions at this point to the presentation specifically, as it did deal with 8.2 and 8.3, and then questions specific to either the capital budget report that we have in front of us or the operating budget report that we have in front of us, we'll deal with specifically on those separately. Okay,
thank you. So one question on the presentation was, there was a slide that showed the different amounts of the capital budget that we were proposing for 2021. And through you, I wanted to ask, I guess, Director Martuccio, I noticed that the shoreline protection budget that we were putting in was approximately $1.5 million. And I just wanted to ask him, does he feel that would be sufficient given the pressures that we have from various people who live near adjacent, I guess, to city-owned shoreline, and plus the fact that we could anticipate we're going to have more flooding in the near future the way things have been.
Through you, Budget Chair. Yeah, the shoreline funds that we've included for the 2021 budget are to address the next priority in terms of shoreline protection. As you're aware, we did a shoreline protection study which identified the priority sections and which ones should be done when. So the next one is Foreshore Boulevard. That's what is included in the capital budget. That's our next priority. There are other pressures, however, we don't feel that they need to be addressed in 2021, but will be required to be addressed in subsequent budget years.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, a second question on the presentation. When we talk about debt servicing and the limit and the fact that we are in fact projecting to go over the 10% limit in 2022 to 2025, I'm pretty uncomfortable with that, but I also wanted to ask, we keep referring to the council approved policy to limit that to 10% of the operating expenditures. So if that is a council approved policy, what will it take for us to accept that change?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will start with that question. With regards to the debt servicing limit and the 10% of the operating expenditures, the forecast that we will be rising above the 10% in 2022 is based on the forecasted amount. As Ms. Chiarini indicated in the presentation, we do not take on our debt until projects are completed. And with regards to our debt issued in 2020, it was 1.25%, which is significantly lower than the 4% that we have included in the model. So each year we readjust our ratio with regards to the actual debt amounts. In addition, staff were working on an update to our debt management strategy, and unfortunately due to COVID that was delayed, and we will be bringing that in the first half of 2021 back to council to look at our debt management strategy. With regards to COVID and as well as the city's asset management position, it is important that we have a discussion with council with regards to debt servicing and how debt is utilized in order for this city to find a balance between the risk management of our infrastructure failing, the cost of infrastructure rising over time to replace or upgrade it, and finally balancing that off also with the level of services that our residents are expected. So this information with regards to debt management will be coming forward to council in 2021.
Thank you very much for that answer, and through you, Mr. Chair, but my specific question, and I think I get the answer. We are receiving these reports and the presentation for information only, I guess. So am I correct, and maybe the clerk should comment on this, that for us to approve at some time a budget that will go over that 10%, that we will require council to approve a change in that policy?
So I would say that this may be a procedural question then. And I would look to the clerk's office for some guidance on this, because I think Councillor Garcia's question is specific to violating the policy. And
Well,
if we do so, do we need a motion of council?
We'll look to the CAO for that. She has more background on the policy itself.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. It certainly is, and it is a debt policy that we have been confirming at the Budget Standing Committee, as you know, reviewing and having a look at that every year. So it's staff recommendation, not that council modifies its policy in perpetuity, but for the purposes of coping with the pressures that COVID has replaced, that there be a temporary amendment to the policy for the years, effectively this year, and then reviewing that each year as our financial situation moves along and comes back to better health. So while we would not recommend, we've been good supporters of that council policy, we would not recommend changing it permanently, but we do feel that to address some of the pressures on the operating budget, that would be a reasonable thing to consider for this year, and that's why the capital budget has been drafted that way.
Thank you to the CAO, and through you, Mr. Chair. So do I understand then that you're saying there will be such an amendment coming before council for approval for those years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that would be part and parcel of the capital budget improvement to it, the approval of the capital budget, to indicate that for this year as a temporary measure, we would see outside that policy. But and then, as you're aware, at Budget Committee, that debt policy would be coming forward next year and should be annually reviewed, given this situation has been the last number of years. But that would be part of the capital budget approval.
Thank you. So that will be in December when we have actually approved the budget, or November?
Through Mr. Chair, yes. When the capital budget comes to council, it's part and parcel of that, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. I just wanted to note briefly, you had mentioned when you were speaking about receiving reports for information. I did want to note and make sure that everybody is aware, item 8.2 is actually a referral motion to City Council for public meetings. So we would be we'd be referring the capital budget to council for that public meeting. It's not just for information purposes. So if there are concerns about the capital budget, but you're not prepared to raise them this evening, the option does exist to defer until Monday's meeting of General Committee Budget. That is also an option as well. With that, I will look Councillor Kushner and then Councillor Porter.
Thank you. Staff indicated that our infrastructure deficit is climbing, but it's lower than the provincial and national average. Having it lower, is that prejudicial to us getting grants from the higher levels of government?
Ms. Douglas or Ms. Chemnitz?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly what is prejudicial to getting grants is not having our asset management plan. There are various deadlines and portions of the asset management plan that need to be completed for the purposes of receiving grants. I would say we should do our best efforts to accurately reflect what our infrastructure deficit is, and do you receive more money when your deficit is higher or lower? I'm not sure that there's a metric on the applications that really speaks to that. What they're looking for is a robust asset management plan when we're applying for infrastructure funding.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure I understood the comment about ICIP funding, that it's 80% funded by other levels of government. Can you expand on that?
Through you, Budget Chair, the ICIP funding, to our knowledge, is funded through the federal or provincial government, and the proposed funding would provide 80% funding for projects up to $10 million, 20% of which would have to be funded by the city.
And what kind of projects would they be?
As outlined in the slide there, we are currently proposing to submit funding when the application is available for active transportation improvements to the Welland Canal, various trails across the city, as well as assets like parking lot at Sunset Beach, Malcolmson Park, and other areas where there's active transportation.
Thank you. My last question is with respect to when we send out the tax bill. Years ago, we did some funding for the hospitals, and we had a separate entry on our tax bill. Can we do the same thing for COVID-related charges?
I'll look to Ms. Douglas.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to that particular item, I will take that away to see if that is something that we would be able to do, and I will bring that information back to a future meeting. I just don't want to quote off the top of my head without referring to the Municipal Act and the legislation with regards to information on the tax bills.
Thank you, because the more information we give to the public, the better it is for us, and it's better it is for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kushner, and an excellent suggestion if that is possible. Councillor Porter, and then Councillor Williamson and Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Chair Cisco. I just want to state quickly that it's very nice to have all of council together at the beginning of these deliberations. And I also appreciate the staff coming up with a theme every year with our budgets. I really do love this year's theme of the tree. I agree with Councillor Garcia that I am concerned about our debt levels. I'm also always interested in new sources of revenue in other municipalities like Newmarket and Richmond Hill and Mississauga, and I believe Guelph have implemented stormwater fees. And I brought this up at council before. I understand we're doing our asset management plan. There was talk that a stormwater fee study would have to be completed before we introduce something like this. And I want to ask Director Martuccio or the CAO, is this anywhere in the budget? I don't see it. Is this something that I need to bring to council? I thought we were potentially working towards it. And I just want to say stormwater fees are a way that we can recover costs from stormwater. It's a more progressive form of cost recovery for stormwater issues. And you can build in incentives for property owners by using credits if they implement best practices in terms of putting in systems onto their property. I know it's a big ask, but it's definitely a source of potential revenue to help us with our infrastructure.
Through you, Budget Chair. Yes, it is included in the budget. That is the stormwater master servicing study that is included in the capital budget. That's required so that the city understands its overall need for stormwater infrastructure, the amount of stormwater that we're capturing or trying to divert from our sewers, and what our overall deficit is. So without knowing, the city's never done a comprehensive study on our overall stormwater system. So that is what that storm master servicing study is for. And it's so that it gives us a good foundation to start discussions about implementing fees.
So that's not a stormwater fee study, that's more of a background study. And then you need I believe you need a separate study to figure out what type of stormwater fees, because there's many different kinds and they've been implemented in various ways in other jurisdictions. Am I correct? So it will require, this wouldn't be a stormwater fees study. It's
No, this is the very first step of us getting to that step. It's hard to it would be hard to do a stormwater fee study without being able to provide a consultant with the answers of, you know, how much storm infrastructure do you need? What is it capturing? Those types of answers need to be provided before we can quantify the type of infrastructure that's required.
okay. And my next question, I appreciate the what seems like good commitments to bike lanes. Are any of those bike lanes protected in your mind, or this? I'm planning on bringing something, just discussions with you about even starting with simple protected bike lanes. Is that part of your budget?
Through you, Budget Chair, the bike lanes that we're proposing are bike lanes like we typically would install on city right-of-ways. When we do design roadways with bike lanes and parking and sidewalks, it is designed to traffic standards to ensure that the overall safety of all the users of that right-of-way is maintained.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Williamson, followed by Councillor Sorrento and Councillor Littleton. Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Unfortunately, I can't have two things open at the same time. The 5-year trend graph, I think it's on the 4th slide. I really can't quite grasp it. You've got cumulative, you got axis on left and right, and they're different numbers, and I don't follow. The trend line is obviously going in the wrong direction. But I just wonder if we could get some clarification about what this means. Annual amounts on the left, cumulative funding on the right. It's sort of atypical to have a graph with different numbers on the axes. Anyway, if I could just get more explanation on how this works and what it means, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Budget Chair, the line on the top line basically shows what our infrastructure deficit is, and it's showing how it's continuously increasing. And then the middle blue line identifies, based on the amount of infrastructure and, you know, the service life of that infrastructure, how much we need to be investing on an annual basis in order to be sustainable. And then the green line is identifying what we're actually funding. So yes, we are underfunding our infrastructure. That is what that line is showing. The cumulative deficit is just showing that as the years progress, our infrastructure deficit is continuously increasing.
So this is a big long-term systemic problem we're looking at here.
Through you, Budget Chair, it is a problem. It is not a problem that is experienced by St. Catharines. It's experienced by many municipalities across Canada, and is part of the reason that we have been mandated to prepare an asset management plan.
Okay, but we're passing on here a pretty unfortunate legacy, I guess. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, as if we continue to budget our infrastructure at the current rate, our deficit will only continue to increase.
Okay, so this is a serious concern, and our of course construction costs have escalated. I don't know if I should say it exponentially, but a whole lot in the last number of years. So this even exacerbates the problem. I'm not trying to be Dr. Doom here, but it just seems to me that this is a big problem, because our primary function is really to provide and renew our infrastructure as a municipality. So this is this is obviously concerning. So that's a comment, not a question, Mr. Chair. So I'll yield the floor, but that is, yeah, it's problematic, obviously.
I agree wholeheartedly with you, Councillor, and it's. I think we can identify the issue as going back a couple of years when we saw a very drastic increase when construction costs seemed to rise very quickly, and I believe Mr. Dillon was the director at the time, and he raised concerns going forward. And I think we're seeing the product of that now, as that infrastructure deficit continues to not only continue increasing, but increasing at a faster rate. So it is something that I think needs to be dealt with. And we've made comment in the past, and this council has done a good job, I think, of expressing to our provincial and our federal colleagues that this is an area where, as Mr. Martuccio said, the city and cities across Ontario and the entire country likely don't have the capacity through the property tax system to be able to deal with this infrastructure deficit. It's something that's going to have to be addressed on a province-wide and a national level. And I think both levels of government need to step up and come to the table more effectively. We've seen good response over the last 7 months, I think, with COVID. But the infrastructure in our community and every other community like ours across the country is suffering, and it's going to continue to suffer. But I appreciate you raising this evening at the beginning of the budget process, because I think it's something we all have to keep in mind. Councillor Sorrento.
Recognizing you, Chair Cisco, my question is for the Director of Finance or the CAO or Deputy CAO. Just a little bit stunned that we have such a terrible deficit directly related to COVID, $4.5 million. My question is, will you be applying in the phase 2 application to the province for relief to offset this deficit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to the Safe Restart program that has been introduced by the federal and provincial governments, the phase 2 funding is for 2020 only. At this point in time, there has been no funding announcements that have been announced for operational costs for municipalities beyond the current 2020 fiscal year.
Okay, so then recognizing Chair Cisco to the director, then maybe, and I guess I'm asking for speculation here, then quite possibly if this continues on, there could be some funding, possibly. I know it's a hard question, it's hypothetical, but your comments or your best guess.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the city, through our government relations officer, we have submitted a position from the municipality with regards to the provincial budget, and a lot of that information was speaking to the impact of COVID-19 and the impact that it has had on the municipality, and the need for the a Safe Restart type of funding program to continue past the current fiscal year of 2020. I'm not sure if Director York has any further comments. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Christine has nailed it. We've submitted a letter and we await our response, and we'll continue to advocate regarding that letter and a follow-up to ensure our city has a Safe Restart budget in place.
That's great. Thank you, directors, and thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Littleton, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to my colleagues for allowing my lateness. I have a question about two projects that appear on the capital budget for roads. The first is all of the work in the Merritt, Almond, Walnut.
Councillor Littleton, if I can just jump in for a second, are you asking questions specific to 8.2?
I think that's what I'm on.
Yeah, okay, so you had stepped in a little bit later. I had asked only questions related to the presentation specifically. That's okay. We're gonna get to 8.2 in a moment, and I will come to you first.
No, it's okay then. Move along.
All right, so.
I'm muting. I apologize.
It's totally okay. Are there any other questions related specifically to the presentations? All right, I am seeing no questions related to the presentation. Oh, Mayor Senzik, yes.
Thank you, Chair. And just in terms of the presentations, because I just want to understand this, when we get to 8.2, are we going to be splitting out the capital and the operating and just focusing on one for now, or is it just going to still be general questions? Just looking for some guidance on that.
Item 8.2 will be specific to the capital budget, the 4-year forecast, and the asset management status update.
So,
and then 8.3 will be specific to the operation budget.
So 8.1 right now, these questions are to like.
So we're actually in a pre 8.2 situation because the presentation dealt with both reports, 8.2 and 8.3. So we finished 8.1. We're just dealing with the presentation because otherwise the questions cross over 2 reports and we can't debate 2 reports at once.
So the next one will be the capital budget, because I just want to focus on the capital budget and talk theoretically. And so is that better set for 8.2?
Better set for 8.2, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions related to the presentation, then I am going to ask a counselor to move the recommendation in the report so we can put it on the floor and we can begin to. Counselor Miller, thank you very much. Counselor Phillips is a seconder. So we have the motion on the floor with respect to item 8.2, and as a brief synopsis, if we pass this today, this will be referred to capital budget in its entirety, and however it may be amended will be referred to City Council for the staff recommendation to be put to public meeting on November the 16th. And I believe the capital budget itself would be tabled on the 2nd. So with that, I had told Councillor Littleton she would be up first, and then I have Councillor Miller. I know I have the mayor as well. So Councillor Littleton, if you have questions specific to the capital budget, now is the time to ask them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I apologize to my colleagues. I have a question about the work that's being done. First of all, let me just say, thrilled to see when work is being done in Meriton. Let me just say that. But I do have a question about the Merritt, Almond, Walnut, Hastings work that's being done. Not to ask why that's being done, but wondering why we are not talking about the Chestnut extension at the same time. So I'm just wondering, where's that? Is that being done? Wouldn't it make sense to kind of do all that at the same time for my non-engineering brain?
Can I just interrupt? And I'm going to ask counselors, I should have mentioned this beforehand. If you can reference the pages.
Okay, sure.
It'll make everybody's life a little
It's
easier.
on a number of pages. There's little bits of it that show up, but for example, page 12,
Okay.
it starts like Merritt Street Road and underground, and then it says Almond Lane, Walnut, and then there's a bunch for Hastings.
Okay. The reference point is appreciated. Page 12. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. The work on Hastings is a joint venture with the development that is being undertaken there. So the work, it's the money that's included in the budget is the city's funds to contribute to the upgrades to those streets in the Hastings area as a result of the development. The work on Merritt Street is replacing infrastructure that is at end of life. This is we are now entering the detailed design stage for that work. The EA was already completed, so we are undertaking detailed design so that we can ensure that the street is fully designed. Utility relocates have been dealt with prior to budgeting for construction funds. The Chestnut Street extension is being addressed in the transportation master plan, which we have a council orientation date scheduled for, I believe, November 24th. And it is being addressed in that document. So we have the council orientation in November, public consultation to follow, and then that report will be coming to council in Q1 for approval, which will be the first step in having the work related to Chestnut Street initiated.
Thank you. And when we're talking about Merritt Street having that work done there, once we're done underneath, the road, how are we going to determine, how are we going to get, like, I guess I'm wondering if this is included in this work, bike lanes, proper bike lanes. That's a very narrow, obviously it's an old, very old part of the city. Has that been all figured out too? Are we going to have some bike lanes there?
So that is the type of work or investigation that is undertaken through the design stage. We are trying to implement as much complete streets types design as possible. So all that stuff will be taken into account. So I can't give you definite answers until we get into nuts and bolts and being able to actually place where infrastructure is going and what would fit within the right of way.
Am I correct in assuming that that's a priority?
Active transportation and complete streets types design is always a priority, and we try to implement it where we can and where we have the land to be able to implement that type of infrastructure.
Okay. I also have a question. I will find it. It again goes on multiple pages, but we'll start 16. It shows up Gale Crescent Road and Underground improvements. Once again, thrilled that we have projects for Meriton, but I'm just wondering, we don't have plans yet for the old hospital. And I'm just wondering if we were to do work on Gale, could we potentially be disrupting that work in a few years? And the reason why I ask this is because residents, myself included, look at projects sometimes and say, well, why did the city do that only to rip it up 3 years later? So I'm kind of wondering, has that been taken into consideration?
Through you, Budget Chair. Yes, we're aware that in some situations, local developments may change the landscape of that area, the servicing requirements, et cetera. I guess one of the struggles that we have is that the infrastructure there needs replacement. It's a priority. That's why it's included within our budget. And a lot of the times we don't have timelines or any outlook on what the development will be or when it would be carried out. So sometimes it's difficult to be able to coordinate with private developments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, am I able to make just a general comment, or are we saving that for later?
Sorry, yes, you can definitely make comment at this time.
Okay, I just would like to say how excited I am for the ISIP. What would you say that staff has put this forward? We've been working on some projects that will be coming. We're going to bring a motion to council November the 2nd that ties into both Welland Canals and Integrated Trail Network. I cannot believe how excited and how much I think this could transform our community. When we start looking at the city we're going to build, it is not just infrastructure. It's not, just the buildings that are in our city. It's the things that really make us come alive. And the idea that we would have integrated trails, that staff has looked at it and said, you know what, we're going to go for that big pot of money. This is transformative for our city. And I'm just so excited about that. I want to applaud staff for doing that. And just a heads up for the rest of council, we're going to bring that motion forward on the 2nd. So thank you so much to everybody about the ISIP. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Littleton. And I will say it's not very often during a budget meeting that the excitement is palpable in someone's voice, but I appreciated hearing that. I'll move on to Councillor Miller is next, followed by Councillor Phillips, Mayor Senzik, and then Councillor Porter. Councillor Miller.
I don't think it's really fair that I have to follow that up, but I will try to up my energy level.
Good luck.
I had a question. I guess I had a similar question about the transportation master plan. Will there be things in the master plan that will be 2021, and maybe I'm just missing them in here? How does that jive with the budget? Because obviously we haven't even approved, let alone reviewed the master plan. So are we going to be kicking it down to 2022 before anything really big changes, and Chestnut Street was a great example, are able to come online because we're simply not budgeting for it this year?
Yeah, through you, Budget Chair, the Transportation Master Plan is going to guide the decisions that we make with regards to some of these bigger transportation type decisions moving forward. However, we do need to complete the document, go through the public consultation process, and get approval by council before we start implementing some of the recommendations that are coming out of the plan. They're related to transportation. There are items that are address some of the items that are in the Transportation Master Plan. They're just items that make good sense, but there's bigger decisions like the Chestnut Street and other decisions that will, I guess, be highlighted in Transportation Master Plan to be able to allow us to budget for it in future years.
I guess I don't really know how to do this, but I just, my excitement level would be really high if we were doing the Chestnut Street extension, for example. And I think it would be unfortunate if we approve it November 2020 and we can't actually do anything until a year and a half or so later. And obviously the project doesn't happen overnight itself. So I'm not sure if there's a mechanism, if there's some way to know what action items are the TMP might be immediate, and so we can set some money aside for 2021 after it's approved in November. I guess I maybe you've answered this, Anthony, but are you anticipating, or would it be prudent to have some things that we're able to act on in that first 13 months after it's approved?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I could take that away and get back to you on that. But I think we can highlight some of the items that are identified within the 2021 budget that do tie to the Transportation Master Plan. It won't, unfortunately, it isn't Chestnut Street at this point in time. The next step for Chestnut Street would be the completion of an environmental assessment, which I think ties in with your comment about, things don't get completed right away. But items like that would be included in the proposed 2022 budget if council endorses the TMP in Q1 of 2021.
Okay. I guess I would say I don't have an action item right now, but I'd certainly be interested at final capital budget deliberation at council, including cost for an EA, at least having that conversation, but having that cost for an environmental assessment for Chestnut, so we can do that in 2021. And be ready to move forward, but that's something obviously we can chat about between now and then. Okay, so I'll skip along here. With regards to bike lanes, I share Councillor Porter's enthusiasm about bike lanes. I actually don't see a lot about bike lanes in this budget. What I see is we're just Pelham Road is basically getting updated bike lanes. Is that correct?
To you, Budget Chair, that's correct. We're hoping to address a missing section in the bike lanes on Pelham Road. That is the section that is hopefully going to be constructed within the 2021 budget.
And then I guess presumably, once again, the Transportation Master Plan, there'll be more of a go forward for how to improve, because I know, for example, north-south access in the city is very difficult on a bike. So would that be, these are items that are going to come up in the TMP?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, that's correct. There are locations that are identified in the TMP. It's unfortunate that a lot of the, I'll call it low-lying fruit in terms of bike lanes have been implemented where it's just paint on a road. A lot of the infrastructure work required now in order to incorporate bike lanes requires the reconstruction of some of our right-of-ways, which are bigger project type dollars.
Okay. I guess I shouldn't complain about the timing of the TMP because it's just wonderful it's happening at all. And obviously staff deserve a lot of kudos for that. But it is unfortunate, I think we probably won't see a lot of action out of it currently until 2021 and so forth. But that is what it is with the timing, I suppose. I guess I'll ask one more of Anthony. The crosswalk, Rainbow Crosswalk, is that actually budgeted somewhere, or is that we're using money from this year?
Through Mr. Budget Chair, I believe that those funds were budgeted in 2020 So it'll be implemented in the spring as was communicated to council in a previous report.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure it was the money was on hand. Okay, I guess hopefully just a couple more questions through you, Mr. Chair. Excited about the potential road work happening in Meriton, just like Councillor Littleton. I have some concern about parks and some of the maybe lack of action on parks in the ward, and specifically we know. Recently, we all got an email, I believe, about public washrooms downtown, and I know public washrooms have come up before for Centennial Gardens, and is connected to the Mare Trail, which is, something I believe that's going to be looked to be updated soon. I'm just wondering, is there a plan somewhere, even if it's not going to happen in 2021, and we don't want to set the budget aside? Is there a plan somewhere to improve public washroom access, both downtown in the Queenston Street area, but also specifically in Centennial Gardens?
Maybe through you, Mr. Chair, maybe I'll take the first stab at that, and maybe Phil could jump in and see if he has anything else to add. We currently don't have any plans for public washrooms in Centennial Gardens or any upgrades within the downtown core. I believe the last set of washrooms that we upgraded within downtown core were at Montebello Park. But I don't believe our forecast includes any additional washrooms at this time.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have nothing further to add to Director Martuccio's comments.
Okay, I think that's something we need to consider, both in terms of just the park itself, the renewal, it's getting more use with the disc golf and the community garden there, and obviously it's one of the largest parks in the city, and especially during the COVID pandemic, a lot of people that's their home, unfortunately. So I think we owe it to them to provide a better level of service than we currently are there. The other park question I really have is about Clifford's Creek Park, and I know this conversation I believe I've had with Mr. Christie before, but we had the YWCA moving into that area. We have a number of new developments going up on Oakdale. We have a basketball court at Clifford's Creek Park that is essentially unusable. I'm wondering what the sort of long-term plan is. We've talked a little bit about other options for that court if we can't have an even court, but to me that should be a priority at this point, that park. So again, I guess I'm curious where it is in the coming years of updates, and obviously if there's potential to move that forward to next year.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So it's not currently in the plans for the 2021 capital or the 2022 capital budget, but I can tell you, Councillor, that our team has met a few times already to discuss what options we can put at Clifford's Creek. As you know, the sub-base materials at Clifford's Creek is not amenable to anything that has a hard surface. And so we are trying to be creative in what we can put there, but certainly it is a priority for us in that we need to find a design that would complement the type of infrastructure that is there, or lack of. But certainly it's because it's not part of our capital budget currently, it is a prime candidate for a Parks Legacy type of hopefully future partnership down the road.
Okay, final one, I guess. Maybe these are all setting up for something I don't know yet. Is about splash pad or lack thereof in Meriton. We know we had the pool, or we did, except for this summer. Originally, I believe the intention was to have a splash pad in every ward. Is that still the plan? And again, is there a park in mind in the sort of southeast quadrant of the city, Sexton?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We are actually in the middle of our aquatic strategy as we speak. So we're in the middle of that work, and that idea has come up several times, actually, even from the consultant that is currently doing that work. They were a part of the Rec Master Plan planning. They're actually the consultant that put together our Rec Master Plan. So the idea is quite alive and fresh. And certainly with the current condition of all of our outdoor pools, it does force us to think about what the long-term
usability is at those sites. We don't have a particular site in mind specific to that ward, to Meriden, but certainly the current pool location in Meriden would be probably at this point a logical spot if those pools are not going to be useful to us in the future. And I'm not saying that they're not. I'm just saying that that is a good location because it's very well used.
Okay, I guess I would say I think Councillor Littleton and I have been quite amenable to this process the last couple of years, but I would hope that the parks in our ward get, I would say, a longer look at next year's budget, because I think there's quite a few that need upgrading. And I understand, I know we can only do so many at a time, and there's a renewal plan in place. But it is difficult when we have, especially this summer and COVID and everything that went on, we're encouraging people to get outdoors, and there are a number of parks in our area that could use an upgrade. So happy to hear that it's the plans are in place, and I'll be excited to see those.
All right, thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. I guess I'll direct this to Director Christie and perhaps Director Mercutio too. In regards to the Sunset Beach plan, obviously we're pleased that the washroom is going to be completed for early next summer. However, in looking at the capital budget, it looks like everything else is going to be put on hold until 2024, as indicated in page 8 of 20. My concern is we have a consultant report that lays out what needs to be done at Sunset Beach. Number one being obviously the washroom, and that's gotten done. But to put a hold on everything until 2024 is really basically means that the report's going to be collecting dust on the shelf. I would appreciate it if Mr. Martuccio or Director Martuccio's and Director Christie's department look at this again and advance it so that each year, say in 2022, something is pulled from that report, and it doesn't have to be something expensive. It can be just simply, say, benches and bike racks, so that a little bit is done every year, rather than so all of a sudden in 2024 we come in asking for $1.5 million, and the council of the day says, "Oh, we can't afford that." If we can have a plan where something is added every year, it'll get done sooner, and I think it would be a lot easier to do. So I'm going to ask that be reviewed. I don't know if you need an amendment to that, Chair. Or just ask that it be done. Secondly, to Director Martuccio, as far as in talking with, in regards to bike lanes, work has been done on Arthur Street as far as sidewalks on the west side, or wherever we're hoping they're on the west side, and with bike lanes, because obviously the traffic to Sunset Beach is increasing all the time, and there's many more people living in there now, and with the amenities that we're providing. I was hoping to see that Arthur Street was going to be included as one of the roads that was going to be on the list this year, but it didn't make it. Where are we with that study on Arthur Street, Director Martuccio?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the work proposed for Arthur Street right now, the only thing that's included within a budget or is on the work plan is the installation of the sidewalk. We're not currently, the reconstruction of the road or any major upgrades to the actual road profile isn't planned. I don't think we have it planned for anywhere within the next 5 years, but I can take a closer look at that and get back to you with more accurate timelines if that's required.
I think with the increased traffic, we definitely need to consider, if possible, with the advent of the sidewalks, to try to put bike lanes in there with the Mark Elliott Transportation Master Plan that we're looking forward to seeing. I think, by the way, I think the first copy should be sent to former Councillor Elliott, because he did ask for this plan. I think it was 13 years ago. So it's good to see that it should be really good. It's taken that long to put it together, but that's an aside. Also, lastly, shoreline protection. You listed at Shore Boulevard, the area of along Butler and Largo and Walker's Creek. I know you and I met with a site visit with a resident at the end of Largo. Have we done anything there to look at the to help out shoreline protection in that area?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, there currently isn't any proposed works for that area. I understand there's some shoreline erosion concerns there. It just isn't on the priority list for 2021, and for the funds that we have available to address shoreline protection, Shore Boulevard is where we're concentrating most of our funds.
So this is not included in your 5-year plan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is included in our 5-year plan. It's just not included within our 2021 budget.
Right. I see that. Okay. So, Chair, do I have to ask for an amendment that the Sunset Beach 5-year plan be reviewed to include amenities for 2022, or do I just give direction to staff to do that?
In this case, I would suggest, and I'm actually going to just looking forward in the agenda, I would actually ask maybe that should be held off until report requests, because that's going to be a separate report, I think. Does that work, Councillor Phillips?
Sure.
Okay, we'll hold off and we'll leave that for the report requests, item 13, I believe on the agenda, 13.2.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Phillips. Mayor Senzik.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just right off the top, I think for council to be aware, I won't be supporting this tonight as presented. I think there's too many deficiencies or lack of understandings within this capital budget that I would be very uncomfortable tonight moving this to a city council meeting. There's a lot more work that has to be done. And so I'll just touch on a couple things, but I think what you've heard also from Councillor Littleton, Councillor Miller, Councillor Phillips, it really just does appear, and it's a sense that this is a capital budget that COVID really didn't happen. We're just gonna do what we were planning on doing last year. And there isn't a lot of pivoting that I'm seeing. Now, again, I've gone through it. I've got a lot of questions about it, and I'm not seeing it. And so you've heard from Councillor Miller about bike lanes, and we're going to put in what it counts to be 60 meters of bike lanes. And if we've learned nothing from COVID, is that people were using bikes in a more active way than ever before, at least from my vantage point, driving around the city in a car, seeing more and more people using bikes. And yet we're not investing, except for we're waiting for some fictitious transportation master plan that may come next year or the year after, whenever it may come. But the reality is that we look at parks, and we had a drought this year. Why is there not in this? Why wouldn't staff have grabbed onto the fact that we had the hottest summer on record, and we're not putting a splash pad in Merritt? Like that should have been, we're just going to do it. And I've seen none of the pivoting here, and it's frustrating. And I think Councillor Miller talked about washrooms. Yeah, like what are we going to do for the washroom situation in our downtown? We've had our city hall washrooms closed since March, and the reason has been due to COVID. These have been closed. What could we do on a capital budget that would invest in washrooms so that we could provide that necessity without having to rely on COVID? Is there a system that we could purchase that cleans the facilities every 15 minutes on the hour that doesn't require staff? I've seen them. We've all been to AMO. Councillor Dodge, you've been to AMO almost every year in the last number. You could walk into these units and they're self-cleaning. So where's that kind of thinking in this budget? I'm not pushing blame on anyone. It's just, I guess I'll ask the question. Director Martuccio, how has COVID influenced your capital budget this year?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, there definitely were struggles in coming up with the capital budget this year due to funding restrictions. I think the preparation that we put into the ISIP funding application was had a strong focus on what we learned from COVID. We're looking at trying to improve and fill gaps within the trail system and improve active transportation, making improvements to the Welland Canal. Actually, within that proposed project, if we're successful, is our major upgrades to the Sunset Beach site with the installation of a new parking lot and new walkways within the park itself. With regards to bike lanes, I don't disagree with you. There's definitely a lack in being able to expand the bike lane network. I think we've indicated that major road infrastructure upgrades are required to add to some of the extensions, and our budget does not accommodate that. We were successful in applying for some funding through the region to help address our gap on Pelham Road, but there are some gaps, and I think that as staff we recognize that.
And through the chair, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I think from council's perspective, they need to see how we have changed the design potentially of our city due to something like a pandemic. And I do think that there's a lot that we have learned in the last 7 months that's going to teach us more about how residents view their city amenities, how residents view their neighborhoods, that we have to actually start investing today and show them with this budget that we see the changes that are being made. And again, through the chair, we've got the Garden City and the Rex Timers, which is going to come offline in the next year or two, and then you're going to have a potential for development there. You've got the hospital redevelopment, as Councillor Littleton talked about. We're going to invest all this money on Gale Crescent, and you're going to have it's bookended by 2 massive developments that are going to take place. So I don't see the rationale in investing in that. Can that wait for 2 years? Can we not reallocate the funds to something like Chestnut, which will immediately address issues of active transportation, of bike lanes, of relieving congestion on Glendale for the local residents who are just trying to get to their place where they live, or Arthur Street, where we've seen an influx of people that I don't think is going to go away, and yet we don't invest on Arthur Street except for some sidewalks, when we should be putting in this year, we should be investing into bike lanes as well. And I guess what I'm saying is this budget, this capital budget is not even close from my perspective to being approved. And I think council needs to really look at this budget as a capital budget and ask yourselves as councillors, does this reflect what your community has experienced in 2020? And are there ways and means that we can address this budget to start to change how we see our city? From bike lanes to parks to beach amenities, we've learned a lot in 7 months, and it needs to be reflected in this capital budget. So what I've been doing as a councillor is, as a mayor, I'm just sending questions to the CAO and to Director Martuccio, and I'm getting information back, and it was shared with council through a report. But I know that I will be bringing forward a motion to talk about Arthur Street, because I support Councillor Phillips and Councillor Dodge. I would expect a motion on Chestnut Street. I would expect a motion on a splash pad that would come into Meriton. I would expect to see things like that, and also infrastructure shifts to better reflect what we're experiencing as a community, but also how we want to grow in the next number of years. We've got on the Geneva Street property on Wood Street, there is going to be a significant development there. Trust me on that one. Everybody knows that that is going to be up for development. And yet we're going to be investing this year, potentially on Wood Street. We're going to redo Wood Street. Why would we do that street at a time when a significant development is going to take place? I wrote down what you talked about when you talked about, it's hard to coordinate with the private sector. Well, this is a great signal that we can give the private sector. In 2 years, we're going to redevelop this street. So if you want your development to be part of that redevelopment, let's get to the table today and let's talk to you, because there has been a success in that. And that was the Seasons development over on Lake and Ontario and Welland. They coordinated with the region and the developer on what was going to be built in that location. The city and the region did all the underground work. And then now you see Seasons coming out from on top of that. We need to see more of that coordinated effort, and I don't see it in this capital budget. So I'm going to leave it at that, Mr. Chair, but I would hope that this doesn't get approved tonight, that it comes back for further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as I had mentioned at the beginning, there is an opportunity. Any councillors who have not spoken to it obviously can defer decision on this to a later date. That is an option, and one which, to the mayor's point, may be helpful if there are concerns that the mayor pointed out that are shared by the rest of council. I'm looking to Councillor Porter, then Councillor Dodge, and Councillor Sorrento. Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Chair Cisco. I have spent a lot of time on my bicycle this summer with my family, and we did travel to the north end. We often went to Sunset Beach and noticed how dangerous it was. There's several parts of the city that are quite dangerous to cycle on. There's getting over or under the 406 is always, the QEW is always a challenge. Various parts of the 406, and a lot of cities are putting up knockdown bollards. We already have bike lanes; they're just not protected. This past summer, during the Martindale Bridge expansion, we used traffic bollards, and staff really helped us use traffic bollards or knockdown bollards, those things that you see in the middle of the road, as a traffic calming measure, and they went up pretty quickly. So I guess my first question is to Director Martuccio. Is there potential to put up temporary protected bike lanes through some areas of the city, like making sure there's some protected north-south routes through dangerous areas or areas that need protection, some east-west lanes? And could there be some kind of cost sharing with the region? Because some of the roads, like for instance, Martindale Road is a regional road. And do you think we could work with the region on a cost sharing initiative so we could easily throw up some knockdown bollards and have the protected bike lanes that I think a lot of the residents are looking for?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, we would definitely be open to engaging with the region on improving safety of bike lanes within our city. We're currently working with them to try to implement painted bike lanes in areas of high conflict to help improve the situation as well. That would discussions with regards to implementing knockdown bollards. There's an operational component to that, as they would need to be taken down during winter season for winter control. But we'd be open to entering into those types of coordinated initiatives with the region if they're amenable to having those discussions.
Thank you. And so would I require a motion asking you to do that, or is that something, or an email where you could sort of potentially come up with a cost of this, and maybe we can work with a community on a plan?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I don't think a motion is required. I can definitely take that back to staff and have those types of discussions to have those things looked at.
Thank you. We had a lot of traffic calming issues as well this year. I don't specifically see traffic calming measures. I see a budget for stop signs, and I know the transportation master plan is coming. I'm just wondering if that plan speaks to things like bump outs. Is that part of the future of the new streets in St. Catharines, where we actually build in traffic calming into the infrastructure. And some of those bump outs, I looked at some in Hamilton, and some of them have a stormwater collection system with them where there's plantings on it. And Councillor Cisco and I had to spend a significant amount of time with residents this summer on traffic calming measures. And we've been looking at things like raised sidewalks. People are traveling more quickly during COVID. It was documented that people were actually speeding through the city and racing. So I'm just wondering if this was part of the planning for the budget.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the city staff are reviewing the traffic calming policy. We implemented some new features this year to test them out, and we're going to continue to test them next year. But some of the actual physical features, such as raised sidewalks or bump outs in the road, those type of traffic calming measures will either get incorporated when road works or works to the sidewalks are completed, or they would get captured through projects as well.
Thank you. My next question, we're including trees in our new asset management plan, and I believe Mayor Sendzik brought this up. I also believe maybe Councillor Elliott used to talk about adding trees as capital assets or tangible capital assets. Is there any plan by staff to move trees and tree management and forestry management from the operational budget into the capital budget, and coming up with an asset class for them?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll take the first stab, and maybe Director Smith can follow up. Councillor Porter, we do have a significant amount of dollars within the capital budget for our tree planting program. I think what you're referring to is the tree stumping operations and the other forestry type. Is that what you're referring to?
It might be an accounting question. It's treating trees like part of a capital asset, I guess.
So
their value.
So it was explained to us that it is classified as a new project, and it is every year, although it is part of our annual capital budget. So you're going to see it every year, but it's treated as a new project every year, so that there's a beginning date and an end date for that project for that year, as we continue to head towards our target canopy rate. So I think that if I'm understanding your question, I'm hoping I'm answering your question correctly. That's why it's in the capital budget as a new project. But it is in capital.
So I guess it's not really treated like our infrastructure assets that have a value. I think, yeah. Director Douglas.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, perhaps I can assist here. With regards to tree infrastructure, we are not permitted under the accounting guidelines to actually capitalize those assets. It is a restriction that we have. However, we included in the capital budget because of the magnitude of it, and we see it as a significant asset, but from the accounting side of things, we're not permitted to capitalize those assets. There's just some restrictions, and in the same sense, we're not permitted to incur debt to plant and to increase our tree canopy. So these items do have to be funded through things like the infrastructure levy or through the regular tax levy support.
Okay, thank you very much. And I guess my last comment is we need some new sources of revenue to meet all of the demands. And for years, we haven't had development charges in the city. And this is something we're going to be looking at. And I think it's something we really need to seriously consider when that study comes back. We need to be looking at new sources of revenue like development charges. I'm really still going to continue talking about stormwater fees, because I think there's a really good opportunity to have a progressive type of fee that can really support some of the infrastructure deficits in the community. And we've talked about other types of fees going forward. I think this is something we're not going to be dealing with that through this budget process, but I think it's going to be really important. I just feel like every year we wring our hands over the infrastructure deficit and our debt level, and we need to work together to do something about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Porter, for that. I'm now looking to Councillor Dodge, then Councillor Sorrento, Councillor Townsend, Councillor Garcia, and then I believe all members of council will have spoken. And then I have Councillor Williamson after that. So I'll look to Councillor Dodge.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad that some of my colleagues have covered a lot of the stuff that I had questions on as well. One of the things that I'm wondering about is the water course. We have a study going on page 75. And I'm just wondering if there wouldn't be a better way of doing when we have like shoreline protection and some of our water courses where we have erosion happening all the time, where this couldn't be something that, I don't know whether it's operational or regular maintenance or whatever, but it doesn't seem to be done. And then we have these major problems with flooding or, pieces of 6 feet of shore erosion that just, get wiped out from the weather. So I'm just wondering if that's, taken care of in that study part that I was looking at on page 75, or if that's something that we could be doing to perhaps save some of this from happening. It's a water course flooding and erosion control priority study. And it's on page 75.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, yeah, that watercourse erosion review is a review of all of our watercourses. As you indicated, watercourses experience erosion quite quickly and in many occasions unexpectedly, and we try to stay up to date with regards to what our priorities are, understanding that we have challenges in being able to address them all. We do want to know where our priority erosion concerns are. So that's what that study's for. More significant dollars would probably be required in order to address some of the bigger erosion areas.
Okay, so I guess as part of that study, could we not have it where we have some sort of cycle where we're going back and we're correcting some of this stuff more often rather than kind of being reactive to it, so that we don't have to be reactive when when these things happen?
Maybe if I could speak to that through the chair. So operationally, we do have a program in place that addresses watercourse maintenance needs. But as you can imagine, there's miles and miles and miles of watercourses within the city, and our budget does not allow to address them on a very short cycle. It's a very long cycle. Mm-hmm. So we hit some trouble spots that we know exist every year, and we try to get through the rest of it as we can, but it is on a approximately 7 to 10 year cycle that we get through all the water courses.
Okay, I guess with climate change and things that happen, things have been changing a lot. I'm wondering if there's some way we could look at shortening some of that, because I know there are some areas that are quite severe and have caused other things like killing of trees and whatnot in some of those areas. And then moving on from that, some of the, a couple of the road reconstruction, not really reconstruction, but some of the areas, when we're doing those, especially in the north end where there's ditches and whatnot, is there a possibility that we can, during those construction, we look at taking away the ditches, or at least not leaving them that they're so deep that it's very difficult for our residents to maintain those?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, when we go to reconstruct roads, we don't use an urban profile throughout the city. So we try to implement swales versus the deep ditches, but there are times where the grading or the drainage for the street doesn't work, and it causes certain areas of the street to be deeper than is preferred. But we try to minimize that when we do our design, so that they're easier to maintain for the residents and for staff.
Okay, and then my one last, I just want to touch a little bit on Arthur Street with the bike lanes and whatnot. We do have a lot of trails that are intersecting going down to Sunset Beach and whatnot. Is there a way that if we can't do something necessarily on the road because we're not doing reconstruction there, maybe to improve our park trail system so that it makes it easier and people would be able to go into the, like, you know, perhaps into Mary Malcolmson or Walker's Creek or right along the canal path where we haven't finished that, making it a safer and easier access into our beaches?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, we're part of the ISIP funding is to improve the trail network within Sunset Beach as well. But I think are you referring to access to the beach from outside of the beach?
No, what I'm referring to is, you know, we're saying that, you know, because of constraints and time and stuff, we can't maybe not put bike lanes onto Arthur Street, but we already have that network there, that maybe there's a way that we can make it so that it would be more accessible and easier for people to get from, say, Lakeshore Road down to Sunset Beach on one of the other trails that intersects into that area.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, that isn't included in the budget as it stands, but it is something that we could look at improving if it fits within the scope of work for the ISIP funding that's allocated for Sunset Beach.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you, Councillor Dodge. Councillor Sorrento.
Thank you, Chair. Recognizing you, my question is to the Director of Finance. I see in the report that we're asking the capital budget, we're asking for 48 million plus and then 10K to come from ISIP. So are we actually asking council to approve 38 million plus?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, with regards to the capital budget that's before you this evening, it totals the $48.4 million. Of that, there is the $10 million for the ISIP project. At this point in time, we haven't received the guidelines and the details with regard to that project and the funding details. From preliminary information, we have included our best estimate as to a project that would most closely align to with would be successful. So therefore today we've got it in the budget, and so the total approval would include the ISIP project. So for the total of 48.4 million.
Okay, and recognizing the chair to the Director of Finance, do you have an idea as to when we might get this $10 million from the federal government?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point in time, the program details have not been released. There's no funding application. There's no detailed guidelines that we have asked, and it's coming is the message that we're hearing. We just want to be as prepared as we can be, because in the information that we have received, the project does need to be completed by the end of next year. So that's December 2021, which makes a very short timeline, and therefore we wanted to get this in front of council with this particular budget.
Recognizing the chair, I have a question either to Director Martuccio or Director Douglas. We've heard a lot of conversation about bike paths, bike lanes, well, bike lanes, not bike paths. And I recall that when we were discussing the PAC, I think a kilometer of bike lanes cost somewhere in the area of about 650,000 to 800,000. Can either of the directors provide this council with an estimated cost as to what a kilometer or half a kilometer of bike lanes would cost?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I don't have that information available with me right now, but it is definitely something I can get back to you with.
Okay, thank you. And Chair, I'd just like to say, I do seem to recall somewhere in the order of about 600, between 600 to 900,000 for a kilometer when this was being discussed while the PAC was being developed. It's a lot of money. It's a big ask for a short stretch of lane. Chair, I have a question for the chief, and then I have one for Director Pelletieri. I see that there's a very significant ask for fire and emergency services. Chief, if you would care to, would you like to comment on that ask preliminarily without going into details, or just to kind of give council and the public a feel as to what the ask will involve? Or even just a description?
Through you, Mr. Chair, which ask are you referring to, Councillor? The fire truck or the $250,000 for preliminary work for a new headquarters?
Both, Chief, if you would be kind enough to enlighten me, both would be very helpful.
Okay, so let me begin with the fire truck. Council may recall that approval and money was budgeted in 2020 to move forward with the purchase of a new fire truck to replace a 20-year-old vehicle. The truck went out for request for proposals, and when we received one singular bid, the bid far exceeded the budget. It came in just before COVID, so I, in conversations with other members of the senior leadership team, thought it prudent that we not come back to council and ask for the additional budget dollars. There was some concern with the fact that we only had one company that bid on the truck, so we decided we would defer the truck until the 2021 budget year. So we've asked for more money than what was originally budgeted for in 2020, because we unfortunately were well aware that the cost of fire trucks continues to rise. So that's that ask, Councillor. The second ask is council hasn't seen the final document. Last year in the 2020 capital budget, council approved a feasibility study to look at our 6 fire stations and to look at what we needed to do in order to plan for replacements of those fire stations. Station 1 being 72 years old, 2 stations being 60 years old, and a fourth of our 6th station is 40 plus years. So a feasibility study's in its final review, and again, the senior leadership team will have to decide when that comes to council. But the one area that we're focusing on is to rebuild station number 1, 64 Geneva Street. And so in 2021, we're looking for $250,000 to do the preliminary architectural work to look at the design of the station. Somewhere along the line, after the feasibility study has been provided to council, council will have to make a decision as to where we're going to locate that fire station, whether it's on the existing site. The feasibility study, again, I don't want to go into too much detail, but the feasibility study also looks at a different site. Quite frankly, it's a site that I prefer, but we'll discuss that at a later date. So the initial ask is for the $250,000 so we can move this project forward.
That's great. Thank you very much, Chief.
My pleasure.
Chair Cisco, please forgive me. I have one additional question for Director Martuccio, which I forgot, so I beg everybody's pardon. And then I have a question for Director Pelletieri. Chair, with your permission, please. Director Martuccio, I know that, and actually Mayor Sendzik mentioned something about the underground improvements. And I did have that written down at Wood Street and Geneva Street, and I believe at Green Meadow and Wood Street. So my very specific question to you, Director, is from what I read, it seemed like it was in pretty rough shape. We've had a lot of water main breaks there. In your expert opinion, Director, can this wait? Can the repairs wait until we get a potential build on that property? Will it hold for a couple of years, Director?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the situation on Green Meadow Wood Street is in relation to a water main that ran through 360 Geneva Street. It connected to Geneva Street. That water main has broken so many times that we cannot repair it anymore. So it's now dead-ended, which is causing water quality issues in the area. That is why it is on the priority list. It is well past its life expectancy and should be replaced. The one on Gale Crescent, I'd have to look at that in a little more detail. There may be a little more leniency with regards to the infrastructure in the Gale Crescent area. But I'd have to look at that in a little more detail.
Well, then let me just ask you a follow-up question, recognizing Chair Cisco to Director Martuccio. Then, and I respect your expertise. If you say that it's that bad, then I'm not going to dispute it. If you go ahead and council approves the budget, and it's in the budget, and there is a new build within a year and a half, how would that impact the work that we will have done at that time? You know, as Councillor Lilton said before, we dig everything up, and then all of a sudden, a year and a half, 2 years later, we have a new development, and then we have to I guess tear it up again. And I understand that. So would it be a problem? Would it just kind of be, can you explain that to us?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, with regards to the Geneva Street site, without knowing the proposed development there, I'm a little bit hesitant on answering what effects it would have. I do know that from an infrastructure perspective, we have quite large infrastructure in Geneva Street, which would be able to accommodate any needs for the development. But there's always the potential with a development that there would be modifications required to the right of way in order to gain access to that development. However, generally those types of expenses are minimal in the grand scheme of it.
That's great. And I just want to recognize the point that you made, that we never know how long these developments are going to take. Case in point, Port Dalhousie, it's almost 17 years, well, nearly 20 years. So that's a very salient point, and I appreciate that point. And now my final question, recognizing Chair Cisco to Director Pelletieri. I see that there is a very significant ask, I believe, regarding the replacement of the corporate IT infrastructure system. I'm going to think I'll say that it's the replacement of the Vailtech system, or was it Vailtech or Vail something? I can't remember. With that presentation from KPMG representative indicated to us that we are really in dire straits. Now, if you could comment on that, the significance of that, and enlighten council and I on this, that would be very important. And I'll thank you now. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, directors.
Through your Budget Chair, I will provide a response, but I may ask the Director of Finance to also maybe complement my response to you. So as you're aware, yes, our system is old, and it's and very outdated infrastructure, if I may say that. And we have very limited support for that system as a whole. As we're pursuing a solution for our needs in this area, we are looking at partnership opportunities. So we are trying to embrace those opportunities to be a little maybe more efficient and be cost conscious in those solutions. Christine, I don't know if you wish to add to that.
Thank you, Jeanette. With regards to the system that the accounting system, it is outdated. It was installed in 1998, so it does require updating. Also, as well as our general financial system, also included within the system is our tax and water billing system. So those also would need to be replaced. So there's additional funds being added for the replacement of those systems. And as Director Pelletieri has indicated, we are pursuing all options and partnerships with regards to updating and replacing this IT infrastructure.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. I'm going to look to Councillor Townsend and then Councillor Garcia for the first times. Councillor Townsend.
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize for my connection issues. I am currently using my phone, so I'm hoping everyone can hear me all right.
You are 5 by 5.
Perfect. Thank you. My first question is, or I'll make a comment too. I do agree with a lot of the sentiments, and I thank my colleagues for sharing already some of the questions that I already would have had. My question here is, I guess this would go to the Director Martuccio. It is in regards to, I heard him speaking about ISIP. And my question is back in 2019, there was some funding that was available for the reinstallation or the resurfacing of the old CN Rail trail, which runs through the Great Ward of St. George's and into Grantham Ward to the waterfront. I'm just wondering if you could just provide a quick update as to if that trail is still going to be resurfaced and updated.
Thank you, Mr. Budget Chair. Our original intent with the Grantham Rail Trail was to resurface that trail using the 2019, I believe it's the 2020 active transportation funds. As communicated earlier, as we went through our design process, we identified that there was contamination issues with the site. So we are now identifying the potential concerns and extent of the contamination before we proceed with the final detailed design. The cost of the trail is going to be extremely more expensive than was originally thought. Therefore, we did include it on the ISIP potential funding project list so that we could get that trail built either through that funding, or else we would have to utilize this year's proposed active transportation funds to help build that trail.
Thank you, Director. That is music to my ears. I'm very excited to hear that, and so are the residents of St. George's Ward. A lot of them have reached out to inquire about that. My other question, I believe, would go to the Director of Parks, Director Christie. Previously, we had discussed the Bunting Road corridor between the Welland Avenue and the Garden City Skyway. In regards to having some trees added, in regards to adding to the tree canopy. I'm wondering if that is still something that we can move in, looking forward into our next year. And I'm wondering if that's something that could be included with the tree planting program that we have.
Mr. Chair, yes, Councillor, we've already added it to our work plan for next year as part of our tree planting work plan.
Okay, thank you, Director, and thank you for answering the questions. I do agree with my colleagues around the table. I think there are things that, as we've learned through COVID, things that need to be addressed, whether it be increasing accessibility and increasing and adding bike lanes. I would agree with the sentiments. I think there is still some work that does need to be done on this budget. Thank you, staff, for putting it forward, and Chair, that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you, Councillor Townsend and Councillor Garcia for the first time, and then Councillor Williamson. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like with Councillor Townsend, a lot of my questions have been asked, but I do have a few. The first one is on the expected $10 million in the ICIP. And like Councillor Littleton, I'm really pleased to see that we're going to be expanding trails and so on, which goes along with what the mayor said in terms of providing more opportunity for people to be outside, which is probably a permanent thing. My question is, I noticed that one of the categories of projects that this can be used for includes flood mitigation. So if some of these funds are going to go into the Lakeside Park front trail there, could we at the same time be working on the flood mitigation for Lakeside Park, which is so critical and an area that suffers so much when we have flooding, which we seem to have every couple of years?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the works proposed in the ISIP funding for Lakeside Park, just to be clear, is the reinstatement of the pathway that connected to the stairs. and making that pathway resilient to future funding. I think that's reflected in the cost estimate that we put forward for it. With regards to making the park resilient to flooding, a more comprehensive review of the park would be required. At this point, I think we're still in negotiations with regards to the ownership of the park and how it related with the pier. But there's also funds included in the budget to look at redesigning the parking lot for the park and making that more resilient to future future flooding as well. It isn't included in as one of the projects to be built. However, we are anticipating to be able to at least have a conceptual design for that park so that it may be coordinated with the work that is going to be done with the region when they redo the Main Street through Port Dalhousie.
Thank you, Director. And through you, Mr. Chair, a follow-up question, and I'm glad you raised that issue. That was my next big concern, is when are we going to resurface that parking lot? Now, as the rest of council and staff know, I sit on the peer task force on behalf of council with DFO and staff. And the latest is that we hope to have those piers, certainly the West Pier, reopen sometime in the next month or so as a target, and that all of the work, including the West and the East Pier, will be concluded as planned by the spring of 2021. But hopefully before the end of this year, weather permitting, people are going to be walking on the West Pier again, which so many of us miss, and so many residents along. And the parking lot, of course, has been severely damaged by the construction on the piers. And I know that staff had a plan for redesigning that parking lot, which would gain us another 35 spots or so, which is going to be critical because parking is at such a premium in Port Dalhousie in any day and any year. And with all these new developments, and we talked about Sunset Beach and the pressures there, we're going to have the same pressures at Lakeside Park Beach next year as well. So timing of that resurfacing, and I'm hoping that obviously that Bronte as the contractor will pay for hopefully 100% of that reconstruction because they are the ones that damaged it. But even if it's in partnership with Bronte, will that be happening in 2020 and at what time?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, it's my understanding from our meetings with DFO and Bronte that Bronte will only be resurfacing the portion of the parking lot that they deemed was damaged as part of the construction work. With regards to the resurfacing, it's probably going to be more like a reconstruction of the Lakeside Park parking lot. The funds that we have included in the budget this year are for like I mentioned, a preliminary design. The parking lot, as you know, it was susceptible to flooding due to the high water levels. So we're looking at making the park, whether it's through raising elevations or implementing features to the parking lot, more resilient to flooding into the future. And it would probably entail the reconstruction of the entire parking lot.
Thank you for that, Director. But to you, Mr. Chair, if Bronte is finished their work in the spring as they're planning, isn't it critical that we have something ready to work with them then? Like if they leave the area and go away, are we going to be able to get them to fund either the portion, as you say, that they claim they damaged, or all of it?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, they will be resurfacing the portion of the park that they did damage. That's my understanding from the meetings with DFO and the contractor prior to them leaving the site.
Thank you. So we could be in the same situation that has been raised already. So they could be resurfacing this, whatever portion we agreed they damaged. And then if there is a plan for flood mitigation that essentially means rebuilding the parking lot, then we'd just be tearing up the resurfacing.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, that could happen. Again, the work that they're doing is only resurfacing. It has a much shorter life than the reconstruction of the parking lot, but I don't anticipate that we will have the funds to reconstruct that parking lot at least till 2023, if not 2025, after the World Rowing Championships.
Thank you. And Director, will the parking lot be fully available, even if it's not fully rebuilt and so on in this coming spring?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, yes, we've coordinated with DFO and the contractor to ensure that the entire parking lot will be available for this upcoming season.
Thank you. And last question through you, Mr. Chair, and I'm not sure who I should direct this to, but I see that we're again committing funds for several years, capital funds, to the Niagara District Airport. And I get frustrated every year when we talk about this, because we have talked so many times about stopping this funding and having the region take this over. What is happening with that project? And I don't know, maybe the mayor can comment, or who can update me on that.
Well, the CAO is on the committee as well. I can provide background that the region and the lower tier municipalities who have ownership in the airport have been negotiating with the best option. The issue being that the airport in Niagara on the Lake is also being tied to the aerodrome that's in South Niagara. So it is a little bit more complex than simply saying to the region, please come and take our airport. There's a lot more negotiations that have to go into it. There's a decision matrix that has to take place. And obviously in the last 9 months, as Councillor Townsend is also a board member of the airport, will inform, is that everything is now grounded to a halt. So that discussion, which was ongoing up until January of this past year, has halted, and it'll be difficult to move it forward in any meaningful way in the next couple of months. So unfortunately, that will stay in the capital budget for this upcoming year, but I can assure you that there's been a tremendous amount of work in an attempt to get the region to see its way through a decision matrix, and probably be another 6 months before we get a decision on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if the CAO can add anything, but if I understand you correctly, we are going to be definitely committed to the funding for this first year of the capital budget, but hopefully we'll be able to do something in future years to reduce that or eliminate it.
CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly the mayor has summarized well the position we're in, which is pushing and waiting as the region works through some of their processes. But for certain, 2021, we will still be obligated to fund the airport, and we will continue to try to move that forward.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia and Councillor Williamson. And I believe this is actually your first time to speak specifically to 8.2, so I apologize for that, Councillor Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How many physics teachers does it take to chair the budget committee is my question. I commend you.
Well, one competent one, but I'm getting a lot of help from over here, so it's awesome.
Good stuff. I agree with Councillor Porter in terms of us being desperate for more revenue sources, but there's good environmental reasons as well to add stormwater fees. It's a good way to try and reduce the size of some and propensity to build some of these gigantic asphalt parking lots, which add to our stormwater flooding issues. So I do think that's something we need to look at. And just to be clear, in terms of the tree budget and forestry canopy, have we lost any ground through COVID? Are we still going to be planting the same number of trees over these 2 or 3 years that we would have ordinarily and what we had committed to previously?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did lose some time during the early days of COVID when the tree planting contractor was not able to fulfill work on site. But they were back, I believe by May, they were back on the job. Also, we were not able to do the spring tree giveaway, so that we lost the opportunity to give away. Last year, we gave away 700 trees last spring, so we were not able to do that. But we just this past weekend, we were able to do the fall tree giveaway, so we were able to give away 400 trees this past weekend. So the net loss from the tree giveaway is about 700 trees net. I'm not really sure how many trees were missed in the early days of spring due to COVID.
But the investment that we are committed to, we're still going to go forward and spend that money on green infrastructure. Trees, the theme tonight. So anyway, I hope that's the case. I'm not going to harangue you on it. Through you, page 22, the Port Dalhousie area storm for flooding study. It's $100,000, and hopefully this will give us some information in terms of reducing instances of basement flooding. I just wondered what is exactly involved in that, and is it realistic to think that there's some things that we can do to minimize basement flooding in this area? Through you to Mr. Martuccio, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I'm going to let Christine answer that question.
I'm just wondering, like, is it camera inspection? Is it something different than that, or what are we looking at?
Christine, you need to unmute your mic. Sorry about that. So this study is intended to reduce look at the potential options to reduce basement flooding in the Port Dalhousie area, in those sections serviced by combined sewers. We look at all sorts of options. We have already done the Zoom cameras CCTV. There are some follow-up full CCTVs to be done under a separate funding account. And then this study will look at engineering options for the sewer system.
Thank you. And is there a timeline on that?
We are hoping to undertake that next year for the study, and then if there's significant dollars involved, that will then need to be prioritized into the rest of the budget, as well as coordinating with other infrastructure upgrades.
Thank you very much. Page 39 is reference to the old Welland Canal lock walls, the maintenance and rehab. Knowing that these are cut stone structures, second and third canal vintage, will we have the specialized knowledge to be able to kind of repair them in such a way that it's not going to detract from? I know some of them are some of the blocks are loose and falling down. There's already been lots of damage done to them, but what's our intent here? Obviously, we're not going to be able to restore them, but I guess we're trying to mitigate the damage to them. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, the intent of that project is to address some structural deficiencies and safety issues within the lock wall system. When undertaking work on heritage structures, we always try to be compassionate towards the way in which we do the work, so that we're not detracting from the heritage value of the structure.
Good. And I'm just wondering if this might not be an opportunity to try and get some kind of grants and funding for, because it is a heritage project, and these are nationally significant resources that we have. So I hope that we do that. And I do have to say, we were walking through JC Gardens Park the other day, and the top end of the second lock was cleaned out. All the brush was taken out, and it was remarkable. Whoever decided to do that, we appreciate it, because it really opens the lock up, and it was terrific to see. So anyway, that's not budget related, Mr. Chair. Okay, we talked. I'm glad to hear there's so much talk about bike lanes and bicycle travel. I just suggest there still are some simple fixes that don't require necessarily rebuilding roads or adding complete trails, and that is, and to be honest, I ride a bike, both a road bike and a hybrid bike, a lot, and I try to find alternate to pathways and trails to use. So where these trails, whether it's the old NS&T path that Councillor Townsend mentioned, or Walker's Creek and Councillor Dodge and Phillips Ward down at Port Dalhousie, I think we need to just have some staff members get on, ride those, and find out where there can be some simple fixes. The other thing, when you're riding on roads, a really important thing is to have the gutters cleaned. The debris accumulates along the side of the road, so it's important that we have street cleaning if we are serious about actually encouraging people to use bicycles. And the off-road option is really important. And it's not in my ward, but the former Fairview Golf Course and John Page Park have been pushing for, and others, Councillor Cisco and Councillor Porter as well, have been pushing for trails through there. We've been asking about this for quite some time. I don't see any money in the budget for that, or is it hidden somewhere else? I just wondered it. That's I think page 46. Is there anything to make some connections through the two parks I just mentioned?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I'm going to ask you for clarification on the first one. I did get the Fairview Golf Trail connection that you requested. That is captured in the ISIP funding. We recognize that there's a deficiency in the trail system there, so we are trying to rectify that deficiency through possible ISIP funding, but just ask that you clarify with what other parts.
Oh, the other, just John Page is the park that fronts on Scott Street, and sort of and connects to the old Fairview Golf Course, yeah, where the structures for the bridge, the NS&T bridge that went over the third canal there at Scott Street by the Christian Benefit Shop, used to be Jumbo Video back in the day.
Yeah,
you probably don't remember that.
Yeah, I remember the Blockbuster. No, it is that is part of that trail network that we are looking at rectifying that deficiency through ISIP funding. It does connect the Fairview Mall to Scott Street, and it's trying to make that connection to allow for more active transportation due to the density of residential within that neighborhood. That would be great. Canada Summer Games is a reference on page 43. We haven't heard much about the rowing facility at Henley Island. Is there any, I know that's not a budget item, but is there any infrastructure that, I'd like to know about that separately, but is there infrastructure monies that have to be spent in terms of making that happen?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that project is being funded through the Canada Summer Games, so there's no infrastructure related, any additional infrastructure on the city end for that project. I'll provide you an update.
Sorry. Thank you. Okay. And then there's the memorial bench program, and there was a lot of memorial benches that were taken off the old Port Dalhousie piers. And is there money to reinstall them? And maybe I should have probably talked to Councillor Garcia because she's on the committee in terms of reinstalling those. And is there a plan in place for that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have done our best to contact the original patrons of those benches to have them reinstalled in various locations throughout the city, but not necessarily on the piers. So they will be reinstalled at some point. We do have budget for it. We have contacted the family, so we are moving forward with that, but not necessarily on the piers.
And is there going to be like appropriate fasteners, so we're not just drilling into the brand new concrete? Has that been determined, so we can take some of them come in and out on an annual basis? I know maybe these are going to be more permanent.
Well, through you, Mr. Chair. So, Councillor, are you referring to installation on the piers? Or
yes. Yes.
No, yeah. It will not be going on the piers. They're going in various other locations.
Oh, okay, so there's none going on the piers. There's not going to be any benches.
Not those same memorial benches. No.
Is,
No
is,
other
is there going to be other street furniture on the pier?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I am not familiar with the overall plan for street furniture on the piers, but certainly not memorial benches at this time.
Okay, that maybe need a follow up on that too. Thank you. Page 49, the museum HVAC system for $700,000. Is that project already started? And I know there was a debate as to whether it was going to.
Councillor, can I just jump in for a moment?
Yeah.
I need a motion to extend because 9 o'clock was the curfew. Councillor Phillips, Councillor Sorrento, all those in favor of a half an hour extension? Opposed? All right, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillor Williamson, continue.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to the HVAC system replacement at the museum, I just wondered what method is it going to be? Electric and potentially green powered from the Seaway, or what has been decided on that?
Through you, Mr. Budget Chair, I believe that the HVAC system that we're going with is electric there. The reason for the additional funding is that we have reached the end of detailed design. We've completed our cost estimate for the project and realized that additional funds are required in order to undertake the work. That's why there's additional funds within the 2021 budget.
Great. Wonderful.
Sorry.
Thank you. And last point I would like to make is that we have a fair number of community partners that provide recreational programming, Grantham Lions Club, Grantham Optimists, Meriton Lions. I'm leaving people out, Club Roma, Jet Soccer, etc. that they provide services for us. The YMCA for sure provides aquatic services that the city used to provide. I just hope that we're in touch with them because some of those organizations are hurting from COVID as well, and they have contributed greatly to providing recreational programming. I think it's important that we stay in communication with them and do what we can to help them out. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Councillor Williamson. Now, based on the conversation that we've had this evening, it seems that there's an appetite for a referral of this report back to staff. So I'm going to ask that a member of council be willing to make a motion to receive the report and refer back to staff to comment on the concerns that have been made. Councillor Porter, Councillor Phillips, that's appreciated. All those in favor of the motion to refer back to staff with the concerns coming back to us?
You can't see me, but yes.
Excellent. All those opposed? Seeing none. Excellent. Okay, that's appreciated. I am going to beg the indulgence of council and ask that we have a motion to defer item 8.3 as energy is definitely waning at this moment. I think we've had a good discussion about the capital budget. I think perhaps we may have overreached on trying to deal with both the capital and the operating on the same night, but I applaud everybody's efforts. But can I get a motion to defer item 8.3 to Monday's meeting?
So moved.
So moved, Councillor Townsend, seconded by Councillor Phillips. All in favor? No opposed. That's carried. And then I'm going to suggest that we also, well, I'll leave it to the, I'm looking to Ms. Sullivan, to the Deputy Clerk.
Just for that deferral for 8.3, we do also have the ABC presentations. So just letting you guys know on that day.
And so it may be an opportunity for a more holistic view of the entire budget. I'll look to item 8.4, Legal and Clerk Services, Office of the Clerk. I'm going to ask for councillor to make the motion. This has been received by council already. This did come to council as part of the budget minutes, and it was requested that it be brought up at the first committee, general committee budget meeting. So I'm going to ask and see. I now can't see anybody on this. Is there
moved?
So Councillor Kushner made the motion, Councillor Sendzik, or Mayor Sendzik, sorry, seconding. Are there any questions or comments related to this this report? As I said, it has come to council already as a part of our budget minutes previously. I'm not seeing any questions or comments. Oh, I am. Councillor Garcia, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. I would like staff, I guess, to comment through you on the urgency of this, considering that we don't have it now and we're in such a financial crunch. What would happen if we didn't do this until next year?
So through the chair, we would be, I wouldn't say we're in the exact same boat. If we defer it for a year, we'll be a little bit worse off. Every time we put this project off, we set ourselves further behind, particularly as we start to implement new IT infrastructure. When we don't have our records management and data management really well thought out with a strong foundation, those systems go in place, and then we have to go back in and retrofit to incorporate any new policies or record systems that we develop after the fact. So that's kind of just the impact would be future years. And then obviously, I don't think that the budget crunch is going to disappear in a short term. So I think we would probably be having the same conversation at that point next year as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Deputy Clerk.
All right, looking to Councillor Sorrento, followed by Councillor Porter and Mayor Sendzik.
Thank you. Recognizing you, Chair Cisco, I would like to make a comment and then a question to Deputy Clerk Sullivan. This report reads to me very, very dire, Chair, and very urgent. So that being said, I'll ask Deputy Clerk Sullivan, you are there on a daily basis and you see the impact of not having an RIM staff person. Can you give us your view of how this is negatively impacting the work and the additional work that this is causing for other staff members and the entire office, please? Just so that I and council can get a sense of urgency of how critical this position is.
So through the chair, something that wasn't really interesting through the development of the strategy is that the consultant was surprised by how much support staff across the city had for this project. Usually there's a lot of pushback, but what they found is when they met with each department and they started talking about what really is records and document management, because we don't always understand what it really is. And then people started to realize, oh, I do struggle with this every day, whether it's spending 15 minutes trying to find a policy from 10 years ago, or if it's our staff working on a report for council and there's 3 different versions of that report. Records management affects a lot of what we do every day, whether we're an operations staff working with work orders or you're the city clerk. What we do find is that a lot of other municipalities of our size, they generally would have a records expert and a privacy expert and someone to deal with the FOIs is the privacy side. When we don't have that, what we find, we have one individual who gets most of their time dedicated to FOI requests. They never have time to provide support to staff that when we actually spoke to them, a lot of them wanted to do better, but didn't have the resources or really know how to do it. So that's just kind of how it impacts our day-to-day.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Clerk. Chair, I could go on, but I don't want to. I want to respect my colleagues. We're at 9:13, so I'll yield the floor and further comments at another time. Thank you very much. Thank you for that description, Deputy Clerk Sullivan and Chair Cisco.
Thank you, Councillor Sorrento. I do want to raise, just so that everybody is reminded, this is you're receiving for information at this point. It has been included in the draft budget, the costs associated with the analysts, but I wanted to remind everybody we are receiving, this will be a vote on receiving for information. Councillor Porter.
With that said, I'll try to keep it really short. I I just think creating a position like this is really, to me, speaks to my role as a counselor. It's about managing risk to the organization. It's about accountability, so we know where all of our documents are. It's about business continuity in case something happens, and we've got our records backed up and easily accessible. And it requires somebody in charge of this project because there are over 600 to 700 people who work in the organization. If you've ever worked in an organization, some people don't save things in any coherent manner. And it really needs kind of an enterprise approach to records management. So that's all I wanted to say. It's the report identified some real risks to the organization that I think we need to address. And I think the last thing is that I believe our FOI requests have increased, and it's taking staff time in order to respond to residents who are looking for information, and ensuring that we are giving all of the appropriate information. We really need to make sure we're resourcing this. That's it.
All right, thank you, Councillor Porter. I'm not seeing any other hands. So with that, I will look to the clerk to call the roll on the recommendation.
Councillor Kushner,
Yes.
Councillor Littleton,
Yes.
Councillor Garcia,
Yes.
Councillor Dodge,
Yes.
Mayor Senzik.
Yes.
Thumbs up, yes.
Sorry, Councillor Miller,
Yes.
Councillor Phillips,
Yes.
Councillor Porter,
Yes.
Councillor Sorrento,
Hardy, yes.
Councillor Townsend,
Yes.
Councillor Williamson,
Yes.
and Chair Cisco.
Yes.
And that's carried.
All right, item 9 is in camera, and there is none. There are no motions arising from in camera, and there are no motions. Any calls for notice of motion? Seeing none, there's one report request listed as myself, but I believe it's coming from the Vice Chair, Councillor Littleton, with respect to one-time costs or forecasted revenue disruptions associated with COVID-19.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and then I believe Councillor Phillips, and I see Councillor Garcia's hand as well. I'm going to look to Councillor Phillips as we had discussed earlier with respect to
Any disruptions that staff report back on that, Councillor Phillips, plan.
Are you there?
Yep.
One.
Councillor Sorrento, if you can mute.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Councillor Phillips, I believe this may actually be addressed in the referral motion. And I'm going to look to staff. Is that the understanding of staff, that this is reflected in the capital budget referral motion?
I don't know if I have the wording correct, Councillor Phillips.
Sunset Beach 5-year plan to include amenities be included in the, well, I did send an email to, I was asked for an email. The amendment was that the Sunset Beach 5-year plan be included in the 2021 budget to, and that funds be provided to continue in the 2022 budget annually until completion.
Okay, so, but that would be as a part of the 2021 capital budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that I would argue then that that is probably actually captured in the referral motion, and I'm just looking to a member of the senior staff, CAO Chemnitz is nodding yes. So that's understood to be a part of that referral motion, so we can strike that from the report request, as that'll be a part of the referral of the capital budget. Also, I have Councillor Garcia and then Mayor Senzik with report request. Councillor Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is appropriate since we have deferred the discussion on the operating budget. I have some information requests that I'd like to see when we review the operating budget. And I don't know whether I should specify those here or I should just send something directly to the CAO and the treasurer asking for that.
I'm going to ask, I think it's best if we send those directly through to the CAO and the treasurer, and When we discuss the operations budget, if you haven't gotten what you were looking for with that request, then you can bring it at that time and we'll make it a report request on Monday night. Does that work,
Okay.
Councilor Garcia?
No problem. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Mayor Sendzik.
Through the chair, just providing a bit more direction. I think it would be also helpful as we go through this, if there's any motions that can be sent through to the clerks and the budget chair and CAO, and then those motions be circulated well before the next meeting in which we would discuss this document, so that as a council, we can see what the individual councilors are also thinking about. Because I've heard tonight that there is some, I think there's some really good ideas. And if we form that into, based on discussions with staff to the budget chair. So I think it's important, put your, if I can ask of council, put your motions or your thoughts, direct them to the staff, get the information back. And then depending on how you feel about the response and where you want to go with this budget, create a motion, and then all those motions will be presented when we discuss this, but we'll have it in advance. So it's not just sort of popping on the screen and we're trying to react to it quickly. We'll all have a better idea of where councilors are going. So I just think that would make a helpful approach if it's the will of the budget chair and staff.
Well, I think that's an excellent idea, and it's something that we've all spoken about. It makes it much easier when we come to these meetings if we know where councilors individually and as a group are at with respect to different ideas. Councilor Miller.
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing the cost of a washroom in Centennial Gardens, and specifically, maybe staff can connect with Mayor Sendzik about some of those self-contained units that he mentioned, which might have be more cost effective. I don't know whether this is too specific, but I mean, with regards to Chestnut Street, you know, I think especially the money for the EA, but again, not necessarily the entire project. But anyway.
Okay, so then with respect to a report request, we're looking for a request regarding washrooms in Centennial Park, as well as self-contained washroom units. Correct, Councilor Miller?
Yeah, that's a good summation.
Okay, and then Councilor Porter, I have you.
Sure. I'm just going to add in the cost of traffic bollards to create protected bike lanes and the opportunity to cost share with the region on some regional roads. And however staff wants to report back on like per so many meters of, I don't know.
Okay, and I believe that's captured elsewhere as a request to staff as well. And report back, but I think that can stay. Councilor Porter, are you okay with that staying as a direction to staff with a memo perhaps coming back to us?
A memo is fine.
Okay, so that can stay as a direction to staff. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up, so if I
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilor Garcia.
All right, just some clarification on Councilor Miller's request there. When he says self-contained washroom units, are we talking about self-cleaning? Is that what the mayor meant?
I believe that was what the mayor was referring to, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then I am going to look to the clerk to call the roll on these. Oh, sorry, there is no discussion or vote. I'm slowly getting to the end of a long day. Okay, so those will be coming back to us at a later date. With that, then we move to adjournment. We have a motion that there being no further items of business, this meeting be adjourned. Can I have a motion to that? I believe Councilor Sorrento was on my list. Councilor Sorrento, wonderful.
Moved.
All in favor? Opposed? If you were opposed, I can't see you. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. This meeting's adjourned.